and welcome to almost the last installment of the American Scouser Fantasy Show. I am here joined by Gally. It's going to be really weird for some people to see him on the other side of the screen today, but it's exciting to give me the reins here and see what we can make of this. Gally, how we doing?
We're doing good. Happy to be in the second chair tonight. You know, some nights the host chair is awful. Some nights the host chair is great. Nights where you lose miserable goddamn fantasy matchups, you know, you figured acquiesce and let you take the reins. I mean, you did walk out of today with a victory or received a bye, whichever way you want to look at it.
I was gonna say, I mean, technically the winner is on this side here, so it's just kind of how it goes. So apologize to Gally for succumbing to defeat to Bickler, the hands of Bickler. I mean, it is what it is. I would personally hate to lose to a guy that complains about the game every week, but at some point it was meant to happen just because fantasy is a bunch of dumb luck sometimes. So it kind of proved his point there. So
It is. But to be fair, if you look at his damn team, this is the part I hate. He bitches, right? Like every week, the game, the lineup predictor, and blah, 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 and how those things happen. But he actually has like a really, really solid team that you have to pay attention to fantasy to actually have some of these players in your team and know there's double games, which just makes me know he pays more attention to the podcast than he lets on, probably does things opposite of what we say, which is why he found a way to beat me. But we'll talk a little more, I'm sure, about it, but got to give him some props. I mean, he got 120 points, and he left 17 points on his bench. So he could have actually had a lot more. He was in the top 300,000 overall for the game week. I think I had the second highest score in the entire league this week, and I lost because I played him. I play anyone else, including you bastard, and I win.
But Agent Bickler is right. He's like that guy in high school who's really athletic and good at sports, but he really hates playing sports. But the coaches are like, dude, we need you. You have to play. And he's like, oh, fine, fuck it, I'll play. And it's just like he turns out to be, an all-conference player all the time. So that is Bickler in a nutshell, and I hope he sees this. So we'll first look at some of the higher scores of the week. We're going to take a look at the team of the week, see if there are any shocks here, anything that stands out to you. I'm just going to pull this up on this screen here. I'm going to do this a little bit live. So we're trying to get this as updated as possible because I'm hoping by the time we get to the league, it might update completely. But with the slow website, I'm sure it's not going to update. But looking at some names here, I'm sure a couple that pop out to you. What do you have to say about this past game week and this team of the week?
Well, I mean, I think the two major standouts for me, right, are one, Estupion's first match of the match week was so ridiculous that, like, today's basic, like, two-pointer was nothing. Was it 15 in the first?
He actually got 0 today.
Oh, he got 0. So he had 17 in the first match and then 0 today. So it's just, I mean, that is just a brutal right because the two late goals gave him the negatives.
Yep.
He was just so good. Obviously, that's a big one. I thought Trent was huge, obviously. And then I think Isaiah is becoming like a really, really big fantasy target. If you look at like the projected goals and all the different metrics out there, he has been at the top of all midfielders on overall value. I think he's been number one for about 4 or 5 weeks now. And it's just crazy that all it took was Roy Hodgson coming in wanting to just defend for their best attacking midfielder to become one of the best attacking midfielders in the Premier League.
Definitely did not expect that. But also as Liverpool fans, it's nice to see Curtis Jones on this list. If you're part of our Discord, which you should be if you're not yet, you might have been part of the heated Curtis Jones debate over the last couple of years, I would say. Yeah. And so it festered a little bit more after Curtis Jones knocked in a couple of the back of the net. But, it's good to see him get on the score sheet. It's nice to see him on a fantasy team of the week. I know, I think it was Trevor. I think you had him on your bench. I think he was the third guy on your bench. So at least having him on there was a good way to go. But as far as everything else, I think Undav is the only other one that I would find necessarily surprising, just considering what Brighton teams could have been put out. But I think we're at a point now where in the season we didn't expect so much rotation. At least I personally didn't expect so much rotation. And De Zerbi did what De Zerbi did, and so we kind of have to adapt and move from there. Spot 3 kind of in your bench, like we mentioned.
Yeah, as far as Undov goes, I mean, he has been coming on and playing better. He's been playing a little bit more minutes, and he's been giving some attacking returns compared to at the beginning of the year where he really hadn't been getting much. But ultimately, the manager does like the player, you can tell, because he puts him in there, and he puts him in there at times ahead of, he put him in there, he started today instead of Ferguson. But ultimately, that comes down to, I think, De Zerbi saying, like, we're not catching Liverpool. The best we're doing is qualifying for Europa. And I think in some ways, De Zerbi's thinking to himself, if we qualify for the Europa Conference, we might win the damn thing. And I don't have to go balls out like I would have to in the Europa League in the group stages or qualifying and play in July somewhere halfway across the continent I don't want to be in with a team that should be in preseason.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see it. If De Zerbi's planning to be there next year, I totally understand what he's doing. And I know I got pissed on today in the Discord channel for basically defending them for not playing all their players because it was injury related from what they said. And they're like, well, why are the players on the pitch then? They're there because they can play. They just can't play 90 minutes. And to me, I think you do that. And at this time of the year, if you know you're just about in Europe, no matter what, some level, I think you let the chips fall. You still have an extra game than everyone else. And I think what De Zerbi did was smart. He didn't play scrubs. He played 2 guys who shouldn't have played. They were both defenders. It was because of injury. Everyone else are his regular subs at this point.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. I don't understand the hate for it today. It killed my fantasy, obviously. And really hurt me because I really wanted them to lose, and I really just want to put the captain's armband on Callum Wilson.
Yeah, Callum Wilson was flying. And speaking of putting the captain's armband on Callum Wilson, we are going to look at the top transfers in and top transfers out this week, in which Callum Wilson finds himself on that list. Up to date right now, 186,000 players have transferred him in. Only 3 players above him. Do you want to talk to the Fernandez, Shaw, and Gundogan shouts here and see if why they are so popular?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is the new game week, right? These are transfers in counting going into the new match week 37, not the one we just went through. So if we're talking about that now, you have Gundogan, Shaw, and Fernandez. Obviously, they have the double game weeks in 37 with 4 teams here on the double game week here. City, United, Brighton feels like they play double game weeks every week. And, of course, Chelsea, which why would anyone buy a Chelsea player? I'm surprised 5 players from Chelsea aren't on the transfers out, except for they're not in any more teams. So I think Gundogan is a complete knee-jerk because I don't think he'll start both those games. Like, I think he starts on – do they play Saturday or Sunday? I think it's Sunday. He starts their next match, and they win the league. And in the following match, the youth kids might play midweek against Brighton. And they'll probably win by 3 and play beautiful football that makes total sense and looks like they've been training with Pep all along, because I think that's what it's at this point. What I saw from City and Real was the best football I've watched in years. Like, what City did to Real Madrid on Wednesday was so beautiful. It made me actually think, like, this team, if this the best chance anyone in the Premier League has of winning the title in the next 5 years is financial fair play hits them with something on these 115 breaches. Because if not, this shit's crazy. What they're doing is just nuts. So I think Gundogan plays. He wins the title. I think Sean Fernandez should be higher on the list. They're both guaranteed 2 starts. And they're both playing on the team that I think has the 2 best matchups this game week, even though one's against Chelsea. You have the other with Wool. Is it no? Who do they have? Is it Fulham? No.
Bournemouth.
Oh, Bournemouth. Sorry, Bournemouth and Chelsea, and both of them are on the beach playing for really nothing.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I don't know with the news that Rashford is back in training if Fernandez is as valuable, but statistically, the underlying numbers, Fernandez is the best fantasy player over the last 5 weeks. He just hasn't gotten anything out of it, which is kind of crazy. So I personally we'll talk about our teams later, but I personally have Fernandez in my side right now after making transfers and the armbands on him.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that Timothy and I have pointed to it on our Monday shows, is that you want to focus and hone in on players who still have something to play for, especially for fantasy reasons, especially for these last 2-3 weeks. Some of these teams in the 8th to 15th range don't have much to play for anymore. They might already be on the beach. It doesn't really matter. So you want to try and target the teams that have something to play for, even if that means trying to target a couple attacking options from sides that are facing relegation, because you know that they're going to have to put out as much as they can. You know, if you put out a Leeds forward, and Leeds gives up 4 goals, you're not going to get a -1 for that forward bringing in 4 goals. They're not going to get docked for that. So sometimes you just have to make sure that you're paying attention. And while it's nice that Brighton has a double game week, you know, if this fixture today kind of cements them in that 6th spot, in that 6th or 5th, even possibly not, I mean, most likely not 5th, but in that 6th, 7th tier, then they might not have as much to play for in that City match either. So even though they're on a double, not necessarily means that it's the best way to go. On the other side of the coin here, we have the top transfers out. No surprise, Ivan Toney is the most transferred out player. I mean, it's very close with Rashford, and Toney's not allowed to play, which is kind of crazy to me. I think only because there might not be that many players left on Toney specifically. But at this point, there's just no reason to hold on to him. You're not going to see him until late next year, unless some things change. But other pieces there, Solly March is hurt. There's some news of Rashford possibly being back. Martinelli knock, and then Grealish is another guy who's been transferred out a lot. Do you think that's just due to Gundogan being transferred in a lot and vice versa?
Listen, I don't understand that one at all. Everyone's raving about Trent Alexander-Arnold moving into the midfield. Since April 24th, he has 14 big chances created, 3 goals, and blah, 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 right? You know when they show those stats, they show all these players, and Trent's like right there. There's a name above it, and it's Jack Grealish. He has 28 chances created in the Premier League since April 24th. That's ridiculous. And one of those matches, he didn't start for rotation. He actually sat out one of those games. So, like, in the same amount of time that we laud Trent and other great players for having like 17, which are ridiculous numbers, Grealish has hit high level. And again, like in that Madrid match, he was everything they spent $100 million to do, and he got him to a Champions League final. He was immense. And I think you got to give him credit. He's found his way into a system. I think he's actually a decent pick. But here's the thing. I think you have to focus on City players who are actually going to play in both matches. So I think that you don't drop Haaland because he's in your side. I think Alvarez is a must if you can get him, because I think he starts both of the matches, because I think that's what Pep does. He rewards players from now to the end of the year he knows won't start the Champions League final, but did a lot to get them there. And I think Alvarez is one of them. I think like a Diaz or one of the fullbacks like a Walker, I think they're the players that get these starts, because there's not a guarantee they're going to play. Stones will start one of the two. And you're still probably smart to keep them because you can get enough points out of one match with them. But for me, I think Alvarez is the gem there. I think as far as the outs go, there's nothing surprising there except for Rashford. And the only thing I think there is that these are teams that are either free hitting or still have wild cards or something left over, because it seems awkward to me to drop Rashford when there's reports he was in full training.
Yeah. Speaking of dropping into full training, is sort of a really bad transition here to dropping out of the playoffs. Christopher Galvin.
Yeah.
They're unfortunately dropping out to unnecessary pet drama in Paul Bickler. We did go over it a little bit earlier. The scores, I just refreshed it. It has not been updated here, unfortunately. But as you can see, Gally has been knocked out by his co-host on Monday, Paul. Let's see, between BJ and Kelly, BJ ended on 91, Kelly ended on 85. So Kelly has also been dropped out.
Bad night in the Galvin house.
That's crazy, which leaves then Scott over Jamie. Yep, Scott had 112. And then I had a bye week playing Timothy, so I didn't have anything to worry about. So getting second place was actually the best thing that could have happened to me.
Well, I don't know if it really was, though, to be totally honest, because I think this is just a random draw. It has to be. There's no rhyme.
Oh, you're right.
There's no numbers here. Kelly should have got Timuchin and his greasing in on points, to the overall standings. Yep. Kelly finished first. Timuchin was 8. I would have been against, Scott.
I should have played Paul.
Right. You and gotten your ass kicked, as it should have been. But no, listen. And the funny thing is, it ended up being 120 to 114, and I was behind the entire match week. Like, every match I was behind. But going into today, I would have been a Vegas betting favorite going into today. We had 2 or 3 similar players. He had Wilson as captain. I had Matoma, McAllister. Like, it was set up for me to actually outscore him today. But Wilson decided to get a goal and an assist in stoppage time, and he had him as captain, and I just had him on my side.
Yeah.
Like, that's ultimately, if the game ends 2-1, I win the thing by 2 or 3 points. Like, it's what happens. And it goes down in history as, an epic loss for me and a great win for Bickler. And I had to remind him that he has his wild card and to use it next week and stack a goddamn deck because he's going to draw you. And I hope you fucking lose.
I hope he does his wild card and every single decision he makes absolutely fails. And he does not catch even a sniff of me at all next week.
Actually, it might be better because I don't know what I would do if he wins this shit. And we have to listen to that.
That might be worse. I think I'm a more humble winner than Bickler would be. And winning is absolutely what Pep and Guns and Nunez are trying to do. Here's an updated look at our standings. There is just a 5-point difference. I did look at both teams. These are the actual accurate scores right now. 73 for Pep, 75 for Guns and Nunez. Both had pretty bad game weeks in their standards compared to the average field.
That's what they had for total?
Yep. If you click on both Pep and here's Pep at 75.
Oh.
And I'm sorry, there's Guns and Nunez, and then here's Pep at 73. So yeah, they somehow, some way, they both had lower weeks. If either one of them had the 100-point week, they could have had a comfortable gap above the other one. But it's going to be neck and neck. There's only 5 points that separates them, which is pretty much an assist by a captain that could really take you one way or the other. So it'll be interesting to see where that takes them. Right now, they both sit in the top 15,000 in the entire game. So kudos to them. Hopefully they can tack on a couple extra points next week so we can be talking about a top 10,000 player in the entire game.
Amazing.
Just absolutely awesome to have them in our league. And then, so moving on from that, what we're going to take a look at now, because we're going to be talking about this upcoming week, let's take a look at Gally's team this past week. So this is Live FPL has actually updated their system here. And now what I'm going to do is, because that's not coming up the way that I want it to come up. So what I'm going to do, let me just throw this up here and just to show you guys exactly what this site thinks. And you thinks United has the easiest fixtures here. And oh boy. We did it. We did it, guys. We did it. Here is Gally's team from last week. Look at the updated jerseys on Live FPL. It's pretty cool. It's a lot more 3D looking.
Oh yeah.
Each kit says Live FPL, so there's nothing specifically. It just says Live FPL. It's not their logo or a sponsor or whatever. So this is what you had roll out. Can you talk us through? Did you have any transfers last week?
Yeah, I made some transfers last week, I believe. I made at least one. Let me think here. Sorry, it's a little small for me. I went I made a double move last week. And I moved Wilson. I definitely moved to Wilson from Solanke. And I feel like I also made another move maybe on one of my defenders. I made a move just to free up funds somewhere along with that, but it was really to get him in. I wanted Wilson for the double game week. I, obviously made the mistake of I rolled the dice of which one I was going to captain. I didn't captain him. Obviously, I really wish I had instead of Isak. And the biggest things with this team was I was set up here with the goal of having a team I didn't hate in match week 38. And more importantly, I knew that I still had my free hit that I was using next week in 37. So we'll talk about my strategy for this week. But I knew I had a free hit coming, so I had no problem bringing in the Newcastle double attack for this match week. And it worked out, right? Like, I just captained the wrong guy. And if I captain the right guy, I mean, you look at that score, I moved up again. I'm inside the top 250,000 of the game.
Yep.
And I think if I had captained Wilson instead of Isak and maybe started Kanate, I was doing the numbers earlier just from a point standpoint. And, Raya's coming in, Martinelli's coming in as subs overall. So my rank score goes up, as you see, with the post subs, and they haven't happened yet. But if I had started the right side, I think I would be like 204. Like, I'd be right outside the top 200,000, which would be crazy for me if I can break that by the end of the year.
I think you would be in the top 200,000 because in on the right side here, it shows you how far off you are from 200K. It's 11 points. So that 11 points would have been made up by Raya, Kanate, and Wilson captain for sure. So you would have been probably top 175 at least, I think. Yeah, not to rub salt in that wound.
No, and I'm okay with it. I mean, I've had a great second half of this season. I was at like 700,000, then I went to like 1 million at one point while we were doing the shows after January 1st. And I kind of buckled down and got like granular with it. And at the end of the year, I'm going to do the numbers, man, and I'm going to find all my hits, and I'm going to tell you that I know it's going to be for a negative. No, and I'm going to figure out the points. And like, I am dead serious. I am playing the game next year without taking a fucking hit. And there are pros out there who actually do it every year, and they always finish in the top like 20, 30,000. Because if you know the game and you play it right, you never give them any points back. And then these guys that take like the minus 12s to have one great week, and they think it's great at 80, but like the average was 68. Yeah. So you didn't need to minus 12 points because you just fell to the average. It's just a really, really interesting game. It's all about numbers. It really is. Like, everyone can call it a match predicting and lineup predicting game, whatever you want to joke about it. It's about strategy and numbers and making strategic plays. And we'll see. I got a free hit next week when two of the best teams could have great matchups. Like, it's a week you want to be able to pick your lineup. So I'm hoping I can put up another triple-digit week, and who the hell knows? We'll get into 38 and see where it goes.
Yeah. I think looking then over to my team here and see if that popped up. Oh no, it's still your team. Why isn't it showing? A couple technical difficulties, all is well.
These things happen, man.
These things happen. Well, here we are. Here's my team. I only made one move. I went off of Darwin to Isak, and I picked the wrong Newcastle forward, obviously. I could have gone Wilson, but I had more faith in Isak. I could have also started Henry over Martinelli. Ederson finally paid off for me like 17 years later. But, sometimes it's a slow burn to get to where you need to get to. I think just like you, our triple defenders or a triple defender idea. The three in the back worked really well. We all had at least, two of the guys were double digits, and then Trippier had 9. So it's really good to have those scores across the back. Midfield was kind of what really let me down. Gakpo did not produce the way that I was expecting him to. If it wasn't Jones, it would have been Gakpo, in my opinion. So I think, it is what it is. You kind of just take it on the chin and keep going. And then obviously up front, like I said, I probably should have gone Wilson. But at the time, Isak felt like the right move. So I knew I wanted a Newcastle forward. I didn't know I needed both. So that's something that I don't know if a lot of people necessarily expected. I know you did. But it's one of those things where you just you keep going and you move on from it. So overall, I did move up slightly. I went up 38,000 places. It's marginal, but it's green. And yes, Ederson is definitely a fan of long-term storytelling because he is going to be part of my story forever. So he's got no way out of it.
And I mean, clearly, you're not going to get rid of him on a double match week coming up. You're going to play him. But do you expect him to start both games? Because I don't. I think they win on Sunday, and I know Pep. He gave the backup a start 2 weeks ago in the middle of a run-in because he has that much faith in him, and I think he just feels every once in a while you need a break, and they got the final, right? 2 finals after the end of the season coming.
Yeah, I mean, Ortega, right? That's who it is?
Yeah, he plays against Brighton. It's not even a question, is it?
Yeah, I definitely think he plays against Brighton, unless for some weird, crazy reason Chelsea is able to beat City. I think Ederson will not play too. So, which leaves me with the decision: do I just play Raya? But they also have the toughest 2 fixtures left in Tottenham away and City at home. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm just going to take a wash on my keepers and not even take a second thought to it because it's just going to add unnecessary tinkering in my head. I'm just going to go with Ederson and just whatever happens, happens. I think I'll take an Ederson 1 game against Chelsea over Raya's game against Tottenham. And so I think that's where I'm at. Even if Ederson sits the second, I think that's still better than having Raya in just against Tottenham. So,
it's totally fair. Totally fair. I was just wondering, just thinking about it, because I think that is a big deal right now when it comes to the City assets. What is worth playing? What is too much? Even Holland, that's why I said I have the armband on Fernandez, and I've been thinking about it, and I have a few other players that I could put it on that are on double game weeks that I feel comfortable about. But ultimately, I look at Holland and I think to myself, will he start against Chelsea on the weekend? I think he probably will. But could I see Pep not starting him and being well, if we need to just beat him to win the title, we will, but we have to win 1 of 3 games to win a title. It's not like we have. So
not like this is the only one they have to.
Correct, and maybe the kid needs to rest. But then he might be I want to get him back on the boil. These guys are playing so good, I want to get him playing. I just feel against Chelsea, I think we get City's rotated side from the Champions League starting side, which is still a side twice as good as Chelsea. Against Brighton, I think Alvarez leads the line and Cole Palmer's playing and Lewis is playing and Akanji and Ortega and because why wouldn't you? It's almost rewarding these guys too, because these are the players who pushed those other players that got to world-class levels, and they're the guys in training every day, doing the defensive drills, doing all the work to make these great players ready to be so great on the weekend, and Pep's smart. He manages his team better than anyone, in my opinion. I think he understands mentality and players and what they need, how much they need to play, and how they need to be stroked. That's why I think City assets are always troubling in fantasy. And I've always stayed away from them. You'll very rarely see me have 2 or 3. I'll have probably 2 or 3 this weekend.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to gamble that I'm going to grab Holland and 2 others. Because the son of a bitch is going to play 1 game, and he might score 20 points.
Yeah, absolutely possible.
But I think Alvarez is the one, because I think he gets 2 starts. And I think we've seen so far when that guy starts, he scores points.
Yeah, it's a different beast in Alvarez. And speaking of Alvarez, he did just climb up 1 point in price. So if anyone was thinking about getting Alvarez in and now you're priced out by a point, like me possibly, because Gakpo also just dropped a point, that might be really frustrating. So, those are things that you have to sometimes pay attention to. That's one thing I've never really been good at, is paying attention to price changes throughout the week. I kind of just deal with whatever happens, and whatever I can make of it, I can make of it, because if I try and play the money game, I'm going to end up picking the wrong guy too early anyway. So I figure I might as well lose 0.1, 0.2, then jump too early on someone and then have that go to waste as well. So sort of a more of a broader question than hyper focus on our teams. Is there, if you had a punt that you were taking on any player for this double game week, who would it be?
Well, seeing that I'm on a wild card, I could have any punt I want. So I'm looking down here as I look at my team, because I don't have it up on the screen and I can't share anything. I obviously have some of the regulars that you would expect. Like, obviously I do have Holland in the side, and I told you before I have Bruno Fernandes and Shaw. I do have De Gea right now. So I have 3 Manchester United assets, though I won't lie. There are moves I can make to drop either Shaw or De Gea and get to Rashford, which I think I will do now that I think he's going to play in both matches, because I think they're pivotal matches for United. Right now I have Akanji, De Bruyne, and Haaland. But as I've told you all night, I think Alvarez is a must-have, and I have unlimited transfers between now and the match week. And I saw that Evan Ferguson didn't start today, so there's no reason for him to be my second striker. If he couldn't start against Newcastle, there's a good chance he's not going to start both the matches. And I don't blame Brighton for arguably protecting their biggest asset, which is kind of crazy when McAllister's going to be sold to Liverpool for 70+ million. But like, if Ferguson were sold this summer, he'd probably go for over 100. So like, it's.
You think?
I do. I actually think Ferguson's the biggest talent they have right now. I'm Irish, so I'm a little bit biased. But no, United wanted him. Like, I think clubs see that he has like both feet. He's a big boy, but he also can play, and I think he has a brain. And he's 19 years old, or 18 years old, and he wasn't even supposed to play in the Premier League, and he scored double-digit goals. And he's been hurt. Like, I think he's a big, big talent. Like, I think the kid in Cisco is the most talented player there. Like, the little Paraguayan. I loved it when him and Almiron got at it. I was like, oh, this is great. This is 2 South American kids about ready to pull out fucking knives out of their fucking boots and start hammering each other. It would have been awesome. I loved what they were doing. Like, and afterwards they were hugging at the end of the match. They're literally countrymen.
Yeah.
They're countrymen. Like, they just wanted to get at it, which was great. But I think Brighton obviously buys well, does well. So Ferguson comes off. I had thrown the Chelsea player there, Maduke, into my team because I needed a low price player. But with kind of the shifts that I'm planning to make by dropping Trippier, I kind of relegated him to my bench, and then I started to think, why am I have a guy on my bench that's 5.9 on a free hit? He comes back in. So I'm going to take the money and probably move him up to Rashford. I just have to decide whether I go off Shaw or De Gea. So let me ask you, with Bournemouth and Chelsea, would you bank on De Gea's mistakes or the fact that he is by far the easiest keeper on the eye and go to another defender because it's so much easier to find another defender? Like, right now I don't have Trent in my side, and I almost feel like Trent and Mo are almost double fixture proof at this point. Like, you're a moron to not have them. And I think I always talk this way, so I'm starting to like talk myself into like ripping up my own free hit team and free hitting again. Good thing I can.
I think the biased fan in me would say don't go for De Gea because we want to see them lose twice. But I think when it comes to the competition,
when I play this game,
Right. You play the game the right way. It is to get points and to win, and to kind of leave your homerism at the side sometimes, which it takes a little bit of effort sometimes, but that's fine. I would say De Gea would be on towards the top of my list because they have two must-win fixtures against teams that they can keep clean sheets against. So I think it's almost a no-brainer. It's just a matter of making sure that you don't want an extra United asset that you can't make room for. So it's either De Gea plus plus Rashford and Fernandez, or it's going to be Shaw plus Rashford and Fernandez. I think that's where you're at right now. And if I were between Shaw and De Gea, I would go De Gea personally and then go somewhere else defensively.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm looking at it now, like, and now I have De Bruyne, but if I want to bring in Alvarez, it will probably be De Bruyne that goes out. And the purpose of that is De Bruyne is the type of guy that Pep always rotates.
Yeah, I mean, he could play 60 minutes over the next 180.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, and I started thinking about that. I was like, I'd rather keep a Kanji because he'll probably play at least 90 of one of them.
Yeah,
I mean, at least. So it's just it's so funny. Like, this is what the game is, and I understand that's the whole, like, but that's what paying attention to the league and knowing what trends happen and knowing how guys get minutes and knowing what are big matches. Like, it's the same thing with the West Ham players. Like, that last match of the season, it'll be a run out for who he wants to play in the Europa Conference final.
Yeah.
But it'll also be a bunch of guys running at 60%, hoping they don't pull a hamstring and go Joe Willock today and not be able to play in West Ham, like in the biggest game of their career. Like, I heard people today, I was at a pub watching some matches, and people were at the pub, like, kind of clowning on West Ham, celebrating so much. I'm like, they just made a European final.
Yeah.
Like, last year, Jose won that trophy and ran around like he won the Champions League. But this year, he got the same team into the Europa League final. And if they win that shit, he's going to run around like they won the Champions League.
Yeah. You can only control your own situation. If that is what is put ahead of you on your schedule, that is what you take care of. And then, I mean, they're all professional athletes. They all want to win, even if it's just it can be the third tier of your European competition club football, but you still want to win. Even someone like me who plays recreational basketball and soccer, I want to win every game. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know I probably take it too seriously sometimes, but I still want to win because competitive, and that's just what it is.
It'll be the last moment that West Ham fans, honestly, it'll be the last moment West Ham fans can actually, like, genuinely embrace and be excited about, like, Declan Rice will be as he hoists that trophy. And you know what? Good for both of them. He's been a loyal soldier to the club. He's been a good servant. He's a great player. He's deserved a move. He'll get a move. Who knows where he ends up? But he'll deserve it. He'll probably do a good job there because he's been pretty good everywhere he's been. And I think around better players, he's going to be even better, just like we see when he plays with England.
Yeah.
He's a world-class player when he plays in the England setup. And like, he's just at West Ham, like, making some good players around him really good.
Yeah.
But they can win that thing. He can pick that trophy up, and he can walk out and say thanks, and there's nothing they'll be able to say. And a team that was almost relegated will be guaranteed to have European football in the Europa League, guaranteed into the group stages.
That's a lot of money.
It's huge for West Ham. Like, this is, I mean, to be honest, if I were them, this is the difference because I'm a cold-hearted bastard. If we win, I'd fire David Moyes. If we lose, I might just keep him because it would cost more to fire him.
Right.
But if we win, I'd want to fire him because I have a talented team that I want to push forward. And now we have this platform and go get good players and not play David Moyes' style. But it's just funny. Like, that's the whole part of how especially with fantasy, like, you have to look at all the different aspects. You have to look at the matches that are happening in League Cups and the FA Cups. You have to pay attention to the rotation. You have to pay attention to the players that get hurt. Like, the really, really great players, like, this is what they do. I get it. This is kind of like their gig. Their whole point is, like, they're following match reports. like the specific beat writers that talk about like the fitness reports and all the different things from training each day. Like, I don't have that type of time. I mean,
Right.
I say it all the time. You're not even married yet, and I have a wife who probably wants to get divorced because of the Premier League. So
she's slowly been inundated, so she knows what's coming.
When is that beautiful day, by the way?
It is in 1 month and 6 days, June 24th. It is coming up quick.
And it is where?
Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. So
beautiful.
In paradise, as some might say. So
beautiful.
Couldn't ask for a better spot. So I'm excited for that. Thank you.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. And I think that is a perfect way to cap this night. And so if you're listening at all, here's what to avoid: all the United players and any other name Gally just mentioned. And I think that's about it. Yeah. Any parting words? Any parting thoughts, my friend?
Yeah. I'm not sure you want to avoid all the United players. It might be okay this week. I will say you play this game, you got to play it with your mind and go for points, like I said earlier. The whole thing is, though, I'm the first one. I play the game with my mind, and I play the game for points, and for where I can go in the standings. I watch matches with my heart, and I realize that shit's just a game. So, like, if there's a chance United can lose 5-0 and have 3 reds in the first 5 minutes, like, I'm rooting for it like anything else. If they give up a howler, I'm laughing at David De Gea, even though I just got blown up my, clean sheet in the 89th minute.
Yeah.
But I think that's about all fantasy sports. I've said that forever. Where fantasy sports creeped into real sports and ruined things was when people started rooting for fantasy over real life. Like, it should be a subset to have fun, some banter, maybe gamble, whatever you want to call it, right? But that's the whole issue I had with fantasy sports, and why I kind of backed away for a lot of years, is that it really shouldn't represent, like, the personality portion of it. Like, it should just be like a byproduct of watching the games. You get to know all these players. You play this game. You banter with your buddies, or, with your wife that beats you every month in the fantasy league. Like, whatever it is, you just do these things because it's fun. It adds to the game. Once it became something that people started to, like, root for over the overall outcome and, like, sport of the game, that really bothered me. BJ, miss you, buddy. Get back soon. But, like, it always really, that's the part where I think there's a balance. Like, you pick the players who you think will do the best for you in the game you're playing, but root for where your heart goes. And for me, if I'm watching United play, I'm rooting for someone else. Yeah. Like, it doesn't even matter who they're playing. I'm thinking not just how can it end? How can it end miserably? How can it end comically? Like, who could just fall down? Like, I don't want people to get hurt. I'm not a big fan of that stuff because I think that's when your guys get hurt. Like, I just want there to be, like, drama and, like, comical theater. So if United could lose 2 matches 5-4, and Bruno and Rashford go for 5 and 4 assists in each of them, and
we'll take those.
Lose both matches. Let's do this, because everybody wins, people. And Gally is a man of the people who loves when everyone wins.
Gally 2028. You heard it here first. So going back to what we've echoed the whole year. Just make sure you guys have fun. At the end of the day, this is
correct.
Just a silly game. It is nice. Game. It is nice to move up in the table. It's nice to have that banter. It's nice to have the community, have the camaraderie, have sort of the atmosphere around the whole thing. But just remember, it shouldn't ruin your week. It shouldn't ruin your day. I mean, it could ruin a couple hours, fine. But just, there are so many worse things that could happen in the course of a lifetime. So if losing a couple head-to-heads is the worst thing that happens in your life, I feel great for you, because you've had a pretty comfortable life then, you know. So just remember, just have fun and listen to us sometimes, and that's going to be the best part.
Actually, by the listen to us sometimes, it's probably you shouldn't listen to us, but keep tuning in Thursday nights, 9 p.m.
And don't forget to come in next week for the last episode of the year. We might do an episode afterwards that kind of recaps the whole fantasy year, possibly. But I know next week is going to be the last week of actual going over and discussing the game weeks and our plans. So thank you all for joining us today. We dropped the link to the Discord in the chat if you're not part of that yet. We are happy to have you there and want to welcome you there and talk about all things Liverpool, all things life, all things anything that you guys need. So for myself and for Gally, we thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next time.